Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. This is Pastor Frank Lee Castellian coming at you again with another Sunday School moment. And today's date is June the 13th, 2021. Our title of our lesson is Why Are You Afraid? Coming from Matthew, the 8th chapter, and the 23rd through the 27th verse. And this week's Sunday School lesson is actually talking about when Jesus calmed the storm. And they were on the boat out there, and the storm was rising and wind was blowing, and Jesus was asleep. Let's take a look at this for a second here. The word tempest is the Greek word called seimos. It's spelled Seimos. That's the Greek word for the word tempest in that verse. And that word actually means earthquake. Now, when you look at the Sea of Galilee and look at its location, it's actually located 600 feet below sea level. So it's below the sea level, and the Sea of Galilee is actually a small body of water. There's lakes that are even bigger than the Sea of Galilee. But here's what I want you to imagine. Imagine this cup right here that I'm holding is the Sea of Galilee, and it's 600 feet below sea level. The sea level is up here, and here's the Sea of Galilee. Now, the Bible says that it was a tempest and it was an earthquake. If an earthquake is happening, you see the water inside of the cup here is moving. And this is what was causing the water to go into the boat and causing the boat to sink. And with all of this happening, what's going on here is that this is what's scaring the disciples because of what's going on. But you would think the disciples would be used to that because they were trained fishermen. Now, the point that I'd like to get to in this story, that with all of that going on and the earthquake is happening here, Jesus is asleep. The disciples are awake. Now, how is Jesus sleeping through this, or is he sleeping? We have an omnipotent God who teaches us in the Bible that he never sleeps. So the physical part of Jesus being in human form was who was actually asleep on the boat going through this. The omnipotence of God is the one who controls the weather and the earthquakes and what's going on with the calmness of the water or the non-calmness of the water. Being that God is the one that controls it, Jesus is actually not asleep but awake with this earthquake going and this tempest going. Now, the Bible says that the disciples followed Jesus into the boat. We tell ourselves we follow Jesus. If he was going into the boat, we would go into the boat also. But in actuality, are we really following Jesus or not following Jesus? My point is, don't you think the disciples might have been better off if they'd have been asleep too? If you're going to talk about what would Jesus do through the storms and the rains of life, Jesus' physical body was asleep because God's got this. So maybe if the disciples were asleep too and not worried about it, then that shaking and that thing that was going on may not have gone on. Let me take a look here, and I want to read this verse here from Daniel, the 10th chapter, and the 8th through the 9th verse. Listen to what Daniel is saying. Therefore, I was left alone and saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me, for my comeliness was turned in me into corruption, and I retained no strength. So Daniel is saying that I was messed up too. And the storms was going in my life, and I'm asleep, and I had no strength in me. But listen to what he said in that next verse. Yet heard I the voice of his word, talking about God. And when I heard the voice of his words, then was I in a deep sleep on my face, and my face towards the ground. Daniel is saying that when the storms of life were raging, he went to sleep and he didn't worry about it. And when he went to sleep, that's when he heard the voice of the Lord, and the Lord took care of that problem for him. So if you're getting into the boat with Jesus and you see the storms of life coming into your life, maybe you ought to think like Jesus and go to sleep. Don't worry about it, because God's got this. Because why? Because God is not really asleep. When they ran to Jesus to wake him up, they woke up his physical part and his human part of his body. Then Jesus spoke and showed his divinity to them by saying, "Peace, be still." Let us remember this, that the cross where Jesus died, he went down into hell, and on the third day got up with all power in his hand, is all that we need. And when we look to the cross, we can go to sleep. And if we can go to sleep, we're not worried about it. And the reason why we're not worried about it is because God got this. So my question is, why are you afraid? Stop being afraid. Go to sleep. Relax. Know that God got this. This is Pastor Frank Lee Castralian Sr. God bless you, and I'll see you in Sunday school.